Chapter 5. "What's going on?" Roxy asked, poking her head into Bellamy's office and waving her phone around. "Something wrong?" "Something's really right," Bellamy beamed, clasping her hands together on the desk. "How would you like to fill up the rooms at the ranch all the way through the end of September?" Roxy put a hand on her hip and scowled at her manager. "This is something you always handle by yourself. Did it really warrant 3 different texts, all asking me to get over here now?" "This you're gonna have to approve. I just got a call from some hotshot talent manager asking if we'd rent the ranch out for at least 3 weeks to give some big star their privacy." Bellamy looked down at the notebook she kept on her desk to keep track of random notes. "In exchange for making sure they're not disturbed and that we don't disclose to anyone that they're out here, they're willing to pay a lot of money." As Roxy came forward and dropped into a chair, Bellamy handed her a sticky note. "Say yes, thank you, to funding your next pet project." Roxy stared down at the figure on the sticky note, her lips spreading into a grin. The ROC had never hurt for money. She made a nice profit on the actual ranching business side of things. Turning the old ranch house into a bed and breakfast and opening the ranch up to tourists had just been an expansion of an already thriving business, something that she'd done more out for the community of Little River. Without a large source of jobs, the small town always teetered toward ghost town status. With money like this, Roxy could do even more for her beloved community. She could start thinking much bigger than she had been, maybe sink a little bit more money into one of these projects than she'd felt safe doing this far. And having someone famous slip word to their friends that the ROC valued their privacy, that wouldn't hurt business. "Have you got any other bookings this would conflict with?" "One." Bellamy glanced down at her notebook again. "But we could upgrade them to the cabin over at the AA. Honeymooners from Utah, so I doubt they'll complain about the extra privacy. They hadn't booked any extra activities." "You certainly have my approval. What's to say no to?" Roxy laughed. "Any ideas who it is?" Bellamy shook her head. "The agent wouldn't say. Promised me a deposit as soon as I called back with a confirmation, and all his information is legit. He insisted that he couldn't say his client's name and that we were to instruct our staff to stay out of the way as much as possible to avoid too many people finding out." She bit her bottom lip. "Do you think it's worth the trouble?" Roxy nodded. "Yes. You'll be down to half staff by the end of August anyway." The ranch house was still growing, with summer being the best time for business. By the time fall was ready to roll around, their bookings significantly dropped. Maybe that would change after their famous visitor. "How many people are they bringing in?" He said around 10. Bellamy scribbled a few more things on her notebook. "You'd know better than me, Belle, but it definitely sounds like something we can handle with half staff." Roxy stood to leave Bellamy to make the arrangements. Bellamy's face broke into a grin. "Who could it be, do you think?" "Hopefully one of the Hemsworths." Roxy winked and headed back out of the office. "If only," Bellamy called after her. As Roxy walked back through the ranch house, she eyed it with pride. Antique pieces from the home's long history littered every room, complemented by subtle Western themes to pay tribute to the ranch and country chic decor that made the front room welcoming and professional at the same time. She found herself wondering how their mystery celebrity had heard about her place, and tag flitted across her brain. He likely had a hand in mentioning it to someone, which turned Roxy's guesses from A-list actors to country stars. She quickly pushed the thoughts away, though. In the weeks since seeing Tag, she'd successfully dismissed her concerns over her reaction to seeing him again. She didn't want to spiral back down into the questions, and she hated that she couldn't completely dismiss him from her mind. He lived in the corners of her heart, a tenant she'd never been able to fully evict, even though she did a good job of ignoring his presence most of the time. After he'd begged her to come with him, she had second-guessed her decision too much, inklings of regret always threading through her. There was always the possibility he had meant every word just as deeply as he claimed. She just didn't have any evidence. And on top of that, she didn't want the life he led, always in the spotlight and on the road half the year. How much would she even have seen him if she'd chosen the path with him? Sure, at first she could have traveled all over with him, but she would have turned bitter at losing her settled, predictable life. And if they'd decided to have a family, you couldn't take kids on the road. Though her heart had hurt over turning him down, she'd made the right decision all those years ago, and again 6 weeks ago. Tag had always lived in a world where his romantic notions made sense. Roxy didn't live in that world. For the first time since Bellamy told her, unease prickled in Roxy's stomach. Even if their mystery guest knew Tag and had been recommended to the ranch by him, that didn't mean that Roxy had to struggle with her decision all over again. She'd make sure of that.